When my greedy parents and brother ditched my Nana's 79th birthday to go skiing in Aspen, they thought they left her completely alone. They had no idea she'd already chosen me to destroy them. You're watching Real Reddit Revenge, and today, we're looking at exactly what happens when an entitled family tries to scam a vulnerable senior, only to realize her quiet granddaughter is a legal powerhouse ready to strip them of everything. My name is Maya Sloan. I was 32 the year I learned what a simple manila folder could do to a family. My Nana turned 79 on a crisp Saturday in October. She'd baked her own cake, vanilla with buttercream roses. It was her specialty. She set the table perfectly for 8. Paper napkins, the fine china, dried flowers from her yard. But nobody came. My parents were skiing in Aspen. My brother sent a text at 4:15 p.m. "Happy B-Day, Nana. The powder is insane." My dad didn't text at all. My mom just posted a ski goggles selfie to her church chat with the caption, "Blessed." I clocked out of my shift and drove 3 hours straight from Hartford. I found her sitting completely alone in the kitchen. The candles had melted right into the frosting. The ice cream was pure soup. She looked up at me like she wasn't sure I was real. I cut us a slice. I sang to her. The next morning, while I was helping her clean up, 2 total strangers knocked on the front door. They handed me a thick, sealed folder, signed explicitly in my Nana's own handwriting. What happened after I opened that package ended my family as I knew it. Welcome back to Real Reddit Revenge. This is where ordinary people draw a hard line to protect the ones they love, and dignity always gets the last word. If stories about standing up to toxic, greedy family hit close to home, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment below. That evening is permanently burned into my brain. I'd bolted out of Hartford at 5:00 p.m., still in my work flats, with a cheap gas station bouquet riding shotgun. 3 grueling hours on I-95, then the winding back roads through Briarwood. I pulled into her gravel driveway at 8:12 p.m. The porch light was on, every other window, pitch black. Inside, the kitchen table told the whole story, 8 place settings, a centerpiece she arranged that morning. The cake sat right in the middle, with 79 spelled out in pink gel. The candles were just waxy nubs stuck in the frosting. A gallon of ice cream had sweated straight through its carton onto the tablecloth. She was sitting at the head of the table in her lavender cardigan, her hands wrapped around a glass of water. "Maya," she smiled, then frowned. "Is it Tuesday?" "It's Saturday, Nana. Your birthday." "Oh," she gently touched the cake. "I thought I was making this for the church bake sale." I stuffed the flowers into a jar and fixed her a plate. We ate the cake with our hands because neither of us felt like washing forks. I had to sing happy birthday twice, because halfway through the first run, she asked me to start over. At 10 p.m., I carried her up to bed. She felt weightless. Her wrist was barely the width of a paper towel roll. As I tucked the quilt under her chin, she suddenly gripped my hand. Her eyes went incredibly sharp, like an old radio locking onto a clear signal through a wall of static. "They think I don't notice," she whispered. I waited for more, but she was already fast asleep. To understand this, you need to know who I am in this dynamic. The Sloans of Briarwood are a very specific brand of Connecticut wealthy. My dad, Gregory, managed regional insurance accounts until he could golf 3 times a week and call it consulting. My mother, Alina, organized charity galas and sat on the library board. My brother, Harper, ran a boutique construction startup and proudly drove a German sedan that literally cost more than my entire annual salary. Then there was me, the lowly paralegal. I worked at a tiny elder law firm in Hartford, handling basic wills, trusts, and guardianship filings. I pulled in a modest $47,000 a year while grinding through law school prep at night. My family casually called me the paperwork girl. At holiday dinners, Alina would tilt her head and say, "Maya is still doing her cute little legal assistant hobby, like I used to sell friendship bracelets at the farmer's market." I never argued. I just quietly read the fine print. But this specific house, this property was mine in every way that actually mattered. I took my literal first steps on this kitchen linoleum. Alina had taught me how to dissect a lease on the back porch when I was 19, her reading glasses perched on her nose and a red pen clamped between her teeth. She even co-signed for my first apartment because my actual parents flat out refused. I crashed in the guest bedroom that night, lying wide awake. Around midnight, I padded down to the kitchen for water. On the hallway shelf, hidden right behind a framed family photo, I spotted a real estate business card. On the back, a hurried handwritten note, comp value $680,000, quick close possible. I slid the card back. My hands stayed steady, but my stomach didn't. Sunday morning, I scrubbed the kitchen while Alina dozed in her recliner. The leftover cake went into Tupperware. The melted wax went into the trash. I wiped the buttercream off the fine china and stacked them away, knowing they'd probably sit there until whoever came to clear out her entire life someday. That thought felt entirely wrong, so I forced it out of my head. Right at 10:15 a.m., there was a sharp knock on the door. Two people were standing on the porch. The woman looked to be around 60, sharp silver bob, tailored wool coat, professional leather briefcase. The man beside her was younger, carrying a mobile notary seal in a zippered pouch. "Maya Sloan," the woman asked. "Yes. My name is Ruth Adler. This is my associate, Nathan Prout. Your grandmother officially retained my firm exactly 14 months ago." She extended a thick manila folder, completely sealed with a wax flap. My grandmother's name was printed neatly on the tab in blue ink. "She gave us strict instructions to deliver this directly to you," Ruth said. "Personally, when the time was right." When the time was right for what, exactly? Ruth glanced past me toward the recliner through the screen door, and her professional expression softened just a tiny bit. "Come by my office whenever you're ready. Here is my card. And whatever you do not discuss this package with your parents until we talk." They were back in their sedan, and pulling away before I could even ask a second question. I stood on the porch frozen, holding the folder. It felt way heavier than it looked, at least 40 pages of dense legal documents. The wax seal had been signed directly across the flap in Alina's distinctive, looping handwriting. This wasn't a shaky, confused mark. This was penned by a woman who knew with absolute certainty exactly what she was putting her name on. I broke the seal. Inside was a dense stack of legal instruments that I recognized instantly from my day job. A certified recorded deed, an irrevocable trust instrument, a durable power of attorney, fully notarized witness pages, and an official evaluation letter printed on medical letterhead dated exactly 14 months ago. Clipped right to the front was a handwritten note on Alina's personal cream stationery. "Maya, when they inevitably come to take the house, open this. Absolutely everything you need is right here. I love you so much. I'm sorry it has to fall on your shoulders. It has to be you." I read that short note 3 times back to back. Each time the phrase, "when they come to take the house," hit me like a physical punch. Not if, when. She knew. She had foreseen all of this 14 months ago, way before the memory lapses got severe. Before she started accidentally calling me by my mother's name. Before the midnight wandering, the active stove burners left on, and the terrifying day she got completely lost trying to drive to the post office just 2 blocks down the street. She knew someone in the family would come for the real estate, and she had meticulously prepared her defense. I closed the folder and pressed my palm flat against it. Through the doorway, I could hear Alina snoring softly in her chair, her crossword puzzle book slowly slipping off her lap. She'd gone out and hired an independent lawyer. She executed ironclad documents. She left me precise instructions. That note completely ruined any chance of me sleeping. I lay wide awake in the guest room with the folder sitting on the nightstand, watching the shadows on the ceiling and listening to the old house breathe. On Monday morning, I called in sick to the law firm for the first time in 3 solid years. A gut feeling told me I absolutely needed to stay on site. And sure enough, I found it while taking out the heavy recycling bins around back. A lockbox. A standard realtor's combination lockbox was clamped tightly onto the main gas meter right behind the thick hydrangea bushes. tucked completely out of sight from the front walkway. I knew exactly what it meant the second I looked at it. Someone was already actively showing this house to buyers. I marched back inside and began digging through Alina's chaotic mail pile, 3 full weeks of completely unsorted envelopes sitting on the hallway table. There, I pulled out an off-market listing sheet printed directly on Voss and Dean Realty letterhead. The exact same Brenda Voss from the business card hidden behind the photo frame. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, original unblemished hardwood, listed at an aggressive $680,000, which was easily $50,000 under the most recent comparable sale in the immediate neighborhood. But tucked deep inside the kitchen junk drawer, I found the absolute worst of it. A formal purchase agreement, currently unsigned but entirely filled out. The buyer was listed as Stonewall Capital Group, LLC, a cash offer with a rapid 30-day close. The seller's signature line was completely blank, but someone had sloppily penciled E. Sloan in faint block letters right underneath it, almost like they were practicing a forgery or a forced signing rehearsal. The primary listing agent was Brenda Voss, but the contact listed as the seller's authorized legal representative on the contract was a name that made my blood run cold: Harper Sloan, my own brother. I sat flat on the kitchen floor, spreading the incriminating pages around me like a twisted paper mosaic. The lockbox details, the listing sheet, the predatory purchase agreement, Brenda's card, and a yellow sticky note in my mother's handwriting that read, "Closing target, November 15th. That was a mere 3 weeks away. I reached up, grabbed the manila folder off the counter, and this time I flipped straight to the very first page of the trust instrument. I read every single syllable of the legalese. I dialed my mother's number at exactly 6 p.m. that evening. "Oh, Maya," Alina's voice oozed that hyper-specific, manufactured warmth she usually reserved for wealthy parish volunteers or high-end restaurant hostesses. It was her bright, micromanaging tone. "How is Nana holding up? We had the most absolutely divine time out here in Aspen. The powder is just gorgeous." "There is an active realtor lockbox attached to her gas meter," I said flatly. Total silence, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. "Sweetheart, that entire situation is currently being handled," she said, her voice shifting. "Your father and Harper have been working closely with an incredibly lovely local agent to establish a proper transition plan for your grandmother. You know as well as anyone she cannot possibly maintain that massive house all by herself. There's a completed purchase agreement sitting right here in her kitchen drawer, Mom." "Maya," the manufactured warmth dropped an octave instantly. "This is a private family decision between your father, your brother, and myself. We have been actively managing Nana's personal affairs for months now. You don't need to stress yourself over the financial details. She has absolutely no idea her home is being sold right out from under her, does she? She knows precisely what she needs to know." My mom paused, and I could hear the distinct, clear clink of a wine glass on her end. "Harper's development company is going through an incredibly difficult financial stretch right now. The liquidation of the house will fully fund a high-end, proper care facility for Nana, while simultaneously helping your brother get through a rocky patch. It is the only responsible choice. It's her literal house, Mom. It belongs to her." "Maya," the tone dropped all the way to the floor, ice cold, completely final. "Your grandmother has documented dementia. She leaves the stove burning. She got completely lost driving to a post office 2 blocks away. She is absolutely not the person who should be making executive decisions regarding a $680,000 family asset." Then she uttered the words that sealed her fate. "She won't even remember the house by Christmas anyway." The phone line hummed with pure tension between us. "Then it's a really good thing I remember," I said sharply. And I hung right up on her. I picked up the heavy manila folder and Ruth Adler's business card, holding them side by side directly under the harsh kitchen light. Tomorrow morning, I would be driving straight to Hartford. Tonight, I had a mountain of reading to do. Ruth Adler's firm was located on the 2nd floor of a beautifully converted historic brownstone right on Asylum Avenue. The waiting area featured faded oriental rugs, framed diplomas from Yukon Law, and a small, polished brass wall plaque that read Adler and Associates, Elder Law and Estate Planning. I had called her office at 7:30 a.m. sharp that morning, and her receptionist patched me straight through in less than 60 seconds, which, if you know literally anything about busy law firms, tells you they were actively waiting for my call. Miss Sloane, Ruth's voice carried that exact same measured, unshakable calm she had on the porch. I am incredibly glad you reached out. Can you make it into the office today? I made the 3-hour trek all over again. Ruth met me inside a private conference room, equipped with a fresh pot of Earl Grey tea and a box of tissues that she placed mathematically between us on the table without saying a word. Your grandmother walked into my office exactly 14 months ago, she began smoothly. Early August of last year, she suffered a frightening episode, got completely disoriented while driving, ended up 2 entire towns over, and couldn't remember how to navigate back home. A kind neighbor eventually brought her back. She called my office the very next morning. She already knew who I was. Her close friend Dorothy had used our firm to set up a trust. Your grandmother came in entirely alone. She was incredibly sharp and fiercely focused. Ruth paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. She was terrified. Of what? Of every single thing that is currently playing out right now. Ruth folded her hands neatly on the table. She explicitly told me, my son will do absolutely whatever Alina tells him to do, and Alina will sell my home the literal second I am unable to physically stop her. She wanted to build a fortress around it before she lost the ability to do so. I set my teacup down. She chose you, Miss Sloane, specifically. She told me, Maya is the only person in this family who will actually fight for this house, because she's the only one who truly understands what it represents. Ruth opened her own thick master copy of the folder. Your grandmother meticulously prepared for this exact scenario. Let me show you the legal architecture. Ruth walked me through the paperwork piece by piece. 14 months ago, in August of last year, Alina had walked into this very office wearing pressed slacks and her finest pearl earrings, carrying a personal folder of her own. The original deed to the property, old tax records, and her primary will from 1998. She also had a detailed list of questions she'd handwritten on yellow legal pad paper in that exact same looping blue ink I'd discovered on the note. She was incredibly methodical, Ruth noted. She told me she'd begun noticing the tiny things, forgetting names first, then missing appointments, then losing the route to the local post office. She said her neurologist had explicitly utilized the term early stage. She knew she had maybe a year, perhaps 2 at best, before the legal window officially closed. The window for what? For executing legally binding, unassailable decisions while she still maintained full mental capacity. Ruth turned the page. She wanted 2 distinct things. First, to permanently protect the house. Second, to handpick the exact person who would protect her when she could no longer protect herself. And she absolutely did not choose your father. Ruth looked straight at me over the rim of her reading glasses. No, she did not. She delivered the line without a single ounce of inflection, but the sheer weight of that statement settled deep into my chest like a massive boulder dropped into perfectly still water. My father was Alina's only living child. He had literally grown up playing in that kitchen. She had put him through college, purchased his very first corporate suit, danced at his wedding. And yet, when the time finally came to hand someone the keys to her entire life, she had driven right past him and handed them straight to me. Because she knew Gregory would immediately cave to my mother's demands. She knew my mother would calculatedly liquidate her life. She knew Harper would greedily take the money. Your grandmother legally executed these documents on August 9th of last year, Ruth continued, tapping the paperwork. Full capacity. Dr. Mercer, her long-term neurologist, provided a comprehensive written evaluation that exact same afternoon, officially confirming she fully understood the precise nature and consequences of everything she was signing. This medical letter is your unshakable foundation. The legal architecture is completely clean. I recognized every single instrument from my own paralegal work. Item number 1, irrevocable living trust. Alina had legally transferred the entire house, the deed, the title, absolutely everything into a trust. The Alina Sloan Revocable Living Trust, dated August 9th of last year. She acted as the primary trustee while she maintained capacity. But I was legally named the sole successor trustee. If she ever became mentally incapacitated, total legal control of the house bypassed my father and brother entirely and passed directly to me. Item number 2, a durable power of attorney. Alina officially named me her sole agent for all financial and healthcare decisions. The durability clause meant it explicitly survived her incapacity. It didn't expire when she got sick. It activated. Item number 3, the physician's letter. Dr. Mercer examined Alina on August 9th and legally documented that she demonstrated full testamentary capacity. She understood exactly what a trust was, she understood what a power of attorney did, and she understood she was placing her home entirely beyond the reach of anyone except the granddaughter she trusted explicitly. So, the house technically isn't hers anymore, I asked, processing the strategy. Technically correct, Ruth nodded. The real estate belongs entirely to the trust. Alina cannot sell it as an individual, and under this specific trust framework, no one holding a generic personal power of attorney over Alina has any legal authority whatsoever over assets that have already been transferred into the trust. Only the designated trustee can authorize a sale, and that trustee is you, the moment Alina is determined to lack capacity. Which, based on everything you've described, the stove being left on 3 times last month, getting lost 2 blocks from home, the successor trustee provisions are likely already fully active. Ruth leaned forward over the table. Miss Sloan, there is something else you need to be fully aware of. If your family has coerced your grandmother into signing anything recently, a new power of attorney, a listing agreement, while she actively lacked capacity, those documents are completely unenforceable. She let that massive revelation sit in the quiet room. They may have forced her to sign something newer. I drove all the way back to Briarwood that evening. The house was dead quiet. The porch light was casting its usual glow, same as always. Looking straight through the front living room window, I could see Alina resting in her recliner, the television murmuring softly in the background, her reading glasses neatly folded on the armrest. I let myself in using the spare key she'd personally given me when I turned 16, the one she had specifically never given to my parents or brother. Nana. She looked up at me for a brief moment, 3 seconds, maybe 4. Her eyes were completely clear, not the soft confusion of most days or the pleasant fog. They were clear like creek water over gravel. You want to see Ruth, she said. I stopped dead in the doorway. You remember Ruth? I remember enough. She picked up her reading glasses and turned them in her hands. I remember I was scared. I went to a lawyer and I told her exactly what Alina would do the second I couldn't stop her. Did I get it right? I sat on the arm of the couch. You got it exactly right, Nana. Good. She put the glasses on, then took them off again, as if she'd suddenly forgotten why she'd reached for them. They've been bringing people through the house on Tuesdays. When the nurse is here, I hear the doors open and close, strangers looking at my kitchen. I know. Your father won't even look at me when he visits. He just talks to the walls. She pressed her lips together. And Harper brought papers. I don't remember what I signed, Maya. I took her hand. It doesn't matter what you signed. You already took care of it. She squeezed my fingers. Her grip was thin, but entirely deliberate. I'm not gone yet, Maya. The words hung heavily in the air between us, fragile and fierce. By tomorrow, she might not remember saying them, but I would. I would remember for both of us. Harper showed up on Wednesday. He didn't knock. He never knocked. He just walked right in with his car keys jingling and his signature smile already plastered on. He entered every room like the room should be glad he arrived. Hey, sis. He kissed the top of my head. He smelled like expensive cedar cologne and the leather interior of a luxury SUV. Just checking in on Nana. That's sweet of you to be here. I'm staying for a while, Harper. Oh, yeah. He opened the fridge, helped himself to a sparkling water, and leaned against the counter like he owned the place. Taking some quality time off from the little paralegal gig. He said paralegal, the way you'd describe a middle school hobby. Harper, I know about the unlisted sale. His drink paused halfway to his mouth. One beat, two, then his smile adjusted. Not gone, just reclassified from charming brother to cold negotiator. Look, I know it seems fast, but here's the reality, he said, stepping closer. My construction company is hitting a massive wall. I have a major balloon payment coming due in 8 weeks. $740,000. If I miss it, the bank takes everything. Every project, every contract. 3 years of work completely wiped out. So, you're selling Nana's house. I'm helping the family manage an asset that Nana can't manage herself. He set the can down. Maya, the cash solves everything. Nana gets a nice facility. Mom and Dad stop worrying. I keep my business afloat. Everybody wins. Everyone wins except Nana. She knows strangers are walking through her house. Harper's jaw tightened. He stepped closer. Don't make this difficult. We're family. Family helps family. Is that what you told her when you brought her the papers? He stared at me, dead-eyed. Then that performative smile came back, but harder this time. It's basically sold already, Maya. The closing is locked in. He left his empty can on the counter and walked out without rinsing it. That night, I searched the bottom of the hallway credenza, right behind a stack of old magazines. I found exactly what they'd forced her to sign. A power of attorney dated September 3rd, barely 2 months ago. It named Gregory Sloan as Alina's agent for all financial and property decisions. Stapled to it was a listing authorization for the house, granting Harper Sloan the right to act as the seller's representative. I carried both documents to the kitchen table and laid them beside the originals from Ruth's folder. The signature differences hit me instantly. The original trust documents from 14 months ago had strong pen pressure. The loops were clean and confident. Every letter connected to the next with that distinctive tail on the capital E. I knew this handwriting. This was the woman who wrote grocery lists in beautiful cursive and signed my school permission slips with a fountain pen. But the September power of attorney, trembling lines. The capital letters barely rose above the baseline. The loops were collapsed. The pen had lifted entirely between letters, leaving awkward gaps where fluent movement should be. This was not the hand of a woman who understood what she was signing. This was the hand of a woman who was physically told where to press down. I pulled up the calendar on my phone and checked the date. September 3rd. My stomach dropped. September 3rd was the exact same week Nana had been rushed to the ER after a bad fall. I remembered receiving a text from my mom. Nana took a tumble. Nothing serious. She's resting. I had thought nothing of it at the time. But the hospital discharge summary, which I unearthed from the mail pile, noted, patient heavily disoriented, intermittent confusion, recommend immediate neurological follow-up. They had forced her to sign a power of attorney during the exact same week. She'd been hospitalized for severe mental confusion. I took high-res photos of everything. Then I called Ruth. Ruth came to the house on Friday. Not her office, the house. She said it mattered that we execute our next moves at Nana's kitchen table. I understood why the moment she laid the evidence out. The table was old maple, scratched from 50 years of Thanksgivings and stained with coffee rings that Nana always said gave it character. Now, it held 5 documents in a row, edges perfectly aligned like evidence at a hearing. Document 1. The recorded trust deed filed with the town clerk over a year ago. The house had been legally transferred into the Alina Sloan Revocable Living Trust 14 months ago. It was stamped, indexed, and locked into public record. Public record. Document 2. The durable power of attorney nomming me, Maya Sloan, as her agent, executed the exact same day. Fully witnessed and notarized. Document 3. Dr. Mercer's capacity evaluation letter, dated August 9th. Highly precise and clinical. Mrs. Sloan demonstrates a full understanding of the nature and consequences of the legal instruments she is executing. She is oriented to time, place, and person. She identifies her assets accurately. Document 4. The shady September power of attorney nomming my father. Shaky signature, 0 capacity evaluation, 0 independent witnesses, executed during a week of documented medical confusion. And Document 5. The predatory listing agreement with Harper's, name as the seller's representative, and an off-market cash price set $50,000 below market value. Ruth stood across from me, her hands flat on the table. "The house has been in the trust for over a year," she said calmly. "Your grandmother cannot sell it as an individual. The September power of attorney, even if it were valid, holds 0 authority over assets already inside a trust. And given the medical records, it almost certainly isn't valid." She looked directly at me. "This sale physically cannot close, Maya. The house was never theirs to sell." I stared at the documents, at the 2 signatures side by side, one strong, one trembling. "She won't even remember the house by Christmas anyway." My mother's cold voice echoed in my head, but Nana had remembered. She'd outsmarted them before any of them even realized it. Ruth and I made a plan, quiet, methodical, and built entirely on paperwork. Step 1, we needed a current capacity evaluation for Nana. Something ironclad a court would accept to confirm the September power of attorney was signed when she completely lacked the mental ability to consent. That meant scheduling an emergency assessment with Dr. Mercer. I called his clinic on Monday morning. The receptionist put me on hold for 11 grueling minutes. When she came back, her voice had that forced, overly practiced quality, the tone people use when they're about to deliver bad news wrapped in protocol. "I'm sorry, Miss Sloan, but we've received a formal request to completely restrict access to Mrs. Sloan's medical records." I gripped the phone. "Restrict access from whom?" "I can't disclose that, but I can tell you the request came in approximately 6 weeks ago, and it specifies that medical records and evaluation results are not to be released to anyone other than the designated family contact." "And who is the designated family contact?" A long pause. "Gregory Sloan." "My father. They'd locked me out of her medical history." I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. 6 weeks ago, that was mid-September, right after they'd forced her to sign the fraudulent power of attorney. They hadn't just scammed her. They'd built a wall around her. I immediately called Ruth. They restricted her records. "Expected," Ruth replied, completely unfazed. "We'll file a HIPAA authorization under your original durable power of attorney. Your document predates theirs by a year and legally names you as her healthcare agent. The clinic is legally obligated to honor it. I'll send the paperwork over today." 2 days later, I had the records in my hands. Dr. Mercer agreed to perform the emergency evaluation. The system is slow, but it works. Elena showed up at the house on a Thursday evening. She didn't bring flowers or food. Instead, she slammed a glossy brochure onto the kitchen table. "Maple Glen Assisted Living." She spread it wide across the exact same wood where Ruth and I had laid out our evidence 3 days earlier. "It's a beautiful facility, Maya," my mother said, smoothing the brochure with her palms. "Private luxury suites, a manicured garden, activities every single afternoon." "Nana doesn't want to leave her home, Mom." "Nana doesn't know what she wants anymore." Elena adjusted her expensive cashmere scarf. "Your father and I have been looking into this for weeks. If we transition her before Thanksgiving, we can have the house fully staged and listed on the open market by December 1st. I looked her dead in the eye. "You're staging the house for the private cash buyer you already locked in." Her expression flickered, just for a microsecond, a tiny crack in her perfect porcelain mask. "Maya, I know this is emotional for you," she snapped. "You've always been weirdly attached to this property, but your brother's company is in real trouble, and this family needs to pull together." "By robbing a 79-year-old woman of her home." "After every single thing I've done for this family," her voice suddenly cracked, fake tears or real ones. After 32 years of her manipulation, I had entirely stopped trying to decipher her acting. "The papers are already with the title company," she said, her voice dropping to a cold whisper. The closing is set for November 15th. This is happening, Maya. Deal with it. She left the brochure on the table and marched out. I'm not going to lie, I almost walked away that night. It would have been so much easier to just wash my hands of the drama. But if you've ever watched your own family decide that an older person's worth comes with an expiration date, you know exactly why I stayed to fight. If this story is boiling your blood right now, type, "I see her" in the comments below, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what goes down at the closing table. I had exactly 9 days left. The closing was officially scheduled for November 15th at Capital Title Services on Main Street, right off the town green. My mother had booked the conference room like she was securing a dinner reservation. Efficient, final, and not open for discussion. I sat in Ruth's office the next morning to finalize our playbook. Option 1, Ruth explained. We file an emergency petition with the probate court to freeze the sale. It will work, but it will be highly public, incredibly slow, and massively expensive. Plus, it gives Alina and Harper time to scramble. Time to move your grandmother, time to hire expensive trial lawyers, time to muddy the legal waters. And option 2. We let the closing happen, Ruth said, a cold smile touching her lips. We walk right into that room with the original documents. We let the unassailable truth do exactly what it does when it encounters a fraudulent contract. If you show up to that closing table with a legally recorded trust deed and undeniable medical evidence, the title insurance company will literally do the heavy lifting for you. She leaned forward. They physically cannot insure a title that is in active legal dispute. They will flat out refuse to close the transaction. The entire scam dies right then and there. And if they try to force it through anyway, title officers face personal liability. No officer with a brain will record a defective deed. This is the quieter path, Maya. No messy courtrooms, just paper on a table in front of witnesses. The buyer, the broker, the title officer, and your entire family. All trapped in one single room, and the documents will do all the talking. I thought about Nana's handwritten note. When they come for the house, she hadn't told me to sue them in court. She had handed me a weapon in a folder. Let the paperwork talk, I agreed. 9 days. I went home and started the countdown. Day 1 of 9. I officially filed a comprehensive report with Adult Protective Services. I sat in my car outside the municipal building and dialed the state elder abuse hotline. The intake agent was patient, precise, and completely unsurprised by a single word coming out of my mouth. She'd heard this exact case 1,000 times before. Different last names, identical malicious blueprint. I gave her the cold, hard facts. A 79-year-old victim with documented dementia. A fraudulent power of attorney executed during a major hospital stay. An off-market real estate transaction intentionally priced drastically under value. A son financially profiting from the liquidation, and a daughter-in-law orchestrating the entire plot. We are assigning an immediate investigator to this file, the agent confirmed. You will receive an official case number within 72 hours. Is there absolutely anything that can fast-track this? I pressed. The illegal closing date is in exactly 9 days. I am flagging this file as high priority and time-sensitive, she assured me. I thanked her and hung up the phone. I sat in that quiet car for a full minute, watching 2 elderly women stroll into the local library across the street, laughing effortlessly about something. Normal, safe, secure. When I finally walked back into Nana's kitchen, I found a brand new voicemail from Ruth. Maya, something incredibly interesting just flagged on our end. Ruth's voice boomed through the speaker. Adult Protective Services just informed me that your report isn't the first file they've received regarding your grandmother's situation. Someone actually filed a detailed, anonymous complaint about 6 weeks ago. They didn't pursue it at the time because the whistleblower didn't leave a callback number. But the official file already exists. 6 weeks ago, right around the exact same time, they forced Nana to sign that fake September power of attorney. Someone else in our circle had witnessed the scam playing out. Someone who hadn't been brave enough to leave their legal name, but had cared just enough to pick up the phone and alert the state. I had no clue who it was. Not yet. But the fact that a pre-existing file was already open meant APS wouldn't be starting from scratch. The wheels of justice were turning slow, but they were turning. Day 4, my father showed up completely alone. He pulled into the gravel driveway in his ancient, 10-year-old Buick sedan. Not the luxury car he proudly drove to the country club, but the beat-up runner he used for low-key errands. The car absolutely nobody in town would notice. He sat behind the steering wheel for a long, agonizing time before finally stepping out. I watched him closely from the kitchen window. His shoulders were heavily hunched. He looked vastly smaller, weaker, than the man I remembered. He walked in through the back door, using the exact same entrance he'd used since he was a little boy. He didn't even acknowledge me at first. He just stood completely still in the center of the kitchen, staring at the wooden cabinets his mother had meticulously refinished with her own hands. He looked at the window over the sink where she'd hung a glass prism that cast bright rainbows across the floorboards every single morning. "She used to sing constantly in this kitchen," he said, his voice barely cracking above a whisper. "Patsy Cline, every single Sunday morning." I remember Dad. He sat down heavily at the table, placing his palms flat against the scratched maple wood. I watched his hands visibly shake. "I know exactly what you think of me, Maya," he muttered, staring at the table. I stayed completely silent, waiting. "I'm not. I never wanted any of this to happen. Harper is in way over his head with debt. Alina keeps insisting that selling the house is the only viable escape path. And Mom," his voice entirely broke, a hairline fracture in a crumbling foundation. "Mom would never want to see Harper lose absolutely everything he's built. You have the power to stop this right now, Dad." He looked up, locking eyes with me for one single, agonizing, trembling second. In his eyes, I didn't see my corporate father. I saw the little boy who had grown up in this exact kitchen, who had eaten birthday cake off these exact plates, who had been carried up to bed by the exact same woman now sleeping peacefully in the very next room. Then his phone buzzed violently on the table. He glanced down at the screen. "Alina." He immediately stood up, his face wiping clean of emotion. "I should go." He walked right back out the back door. He didn't even stop to say goodbye to his own mother. I quietly washed his coffee mug and put it back in the cabinet. Day 5, I went out and bought a cake. Not a massive, fancy commercial one, just a simple, 6-inch round vanilla cake from the local bakery down on Elm Street. Vanilla with extra buttercream, because that was her absolute favorite. I placed a single candle in the center, because 79 individual candles felt like a legitimate fire hazard, and I desperately wanted to make her laugh. I set the table at exactly 3 p.m. 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 clean napkins. I brewed a fresh pot of hot tea. "Nana, come sit with me." She shuffled slowly out of the living room, her reading glasses perched on top of her head, a half-finished crossword puzzle tucked into her cardigan pocket. The second she spotted the cake, she stopped dead in her tracks. "Whose birthday is it?" "Yours," I smiled. "We're doing a do-over." She sat down. I struck a match and lit the single candle. She stared intensely at the small flame, the exact way you look at something you are desperately trying to lock into your mind. Carefully, deliberately, like if she stared hard enough, she could force the moment to stick permanently. "Make a wish," I whispered. She closed her eyes tight. She blew. The candle went out on her very first attempt. "What did you wish for?" She looked up, locking her clear, creek-water eyes directly onto mine. "I wish that you would stay." We ate our cake with proper forks this time. She sat there and told me beautiful stories about the hydrangeas she had personally planted along the front walkway back in 1987, the exact year I was born. She told me this very kitchen table had been handed down from her own mother's house in Bridgeport, hauled into town on the back of a pickup truck in 1974. She explained that every single scratch on this wood represented a family Thanksgiving she had successfully won. Then she suddenly set her fork down. She leaned completely across the table, her face turning dead serious. "Do not let them take this table, Maya," she said, quiet, fierce, terrified. I gripped her hand. "I won't, Nana, I promise you. The table stays right here. I cleared the plates and washed the dishes. I wrapped the remaining cake tightly in foil, taking a thick black Sharpie and writing, Nana's birthday, round 2 across the top. Exactly 4 days left until the closing. Day 6, the coordinated family phone calls officially began. My Aunt Caroline, my dad's older cousin, called my phone first. Her voice was dripping with forced, patronizing concern. "Maya, honey," she cooed softly, "your mother just called me, and she says you are actively trying to hijack control of Nana's personal finances." Manipulating, that was the word my mother used. I held the phone away from my ear, staring at the ceiling. "Aunt Caroline, did Diane mention she's trying to sell Gran's house while Gran has dementia?" Silence. Then, she said it was a family decision. "It's a decision Gran didn't make," I said and hung up. Next came my mother's friend from the parish council, then Aaron's business partner, then a woman from the garden club who'd known Gran for 40 years. Each call carried the exact same script. Nora is overstepping. Nora is emotional. Nora doesn't understand the family's financial situation. Diane had shaped the narrative before I could even breathe. I didn't fight it. I didn't post on social media or call people back to plead my case. Ruth's advice echoed in my head. "The documents speak. You don't have to." But at 9 p.m. on day 6, my phone rang one last time. Aunt June, Gran's younger sister, 81 years old, sharp as a tack, living in Bridgeport. "Nora," her voice was dry and clear. "I don't believe a word Diane is saying. Your grandmother called me last August. She said she was putting the house in order while she still could. She told me, if anything happens, back Nora up. I'm backing you up, whatever you need." 3 days until closing. Day 7. Ruth and I confirmed the details. Capital Title Services, November 15th, 2:00 p.m., Conference Room B. The escrow officer was Linda Yates, 22 years in the business, thorough and entirely by the book. The buyer was Stonewall Capital Group, a predatory cash acquisition firm represented by a man named Daniel Frey. Brenda Voss would be there as the listing agent. Deanne, Aaron, and my father Gregory would attend as the sellers. But Ruth made an off-the-record call to the title company and uncovered a massive red flag. Linda Yates had actually flagged the file 3 weeks ago. During the preliminary title search, she noticed the house was held in a trust and demanded clarification. Brenda Voss had sent back a signed affidavit claiming the trust was dissolved and the property was returned to Gran individually. It was a blatant lie. The trust was never dissolved. The deal was already standing on cracked ice, and all it needed was someone to put the original deed on the table. That's the thing about paperwork. It doesn't raise its voice, and it never forgets. 2 days left, day 8. Everything was locked in. Ruth would attend as Gran's attorney of record representing the trust, bringing certified copies of the deed, the durable power of attorney, and the capacity evaluation. Adult Protective Services had assigned an investigator, Sandra Weeks. She wouldn't be in the room, but she confirmed the case was active. I spent the afternoon at the kitchen table reviewing the stack. The trust deed, the real power of attorney, the capacity letter, the shaky September forgery, the hospital discharge summary. Every single date and signature pointed in the exact same direction. I practiced my delivery. Short sentences, no accusations, no emotion, just facts delivered at a conversational volume. I wasn't the daughter they'd spent a lifetime ignoring anymore. I was the successor trustee of the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust. That evening, I ironed my blouse and set out my work flats, the same flats I'd worn the night I drove 3 hours just to sing happy birthday to a woman sitting alone in the dark. Tomorrow, they were going to sign for a house that wasn't theirs, and I was going to be there when they found out. The night before the closing, I sat with Gran. She was having a good hour. She was working on a crossword puzzle with a ballpoint pen. No pencil, because she always said pencils were for people who didn't trust themselves. "Gran, tomorrow's going to be a big day." "MMHMM." She didn't look up. 7 across, legal instrument of protection, 5 letters. I smiled. Trust. She wrote it in. Smarty pants. The pen moved slowly, but with intention. She put the puzzle down and looked at me. You're staying. I'm staying. She reached into her cardigan pocket, pulled out her old leather glasses case, and handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a recent note in her shaky handwriting. For Nora, the keeper of the table. Underneath was her signature, trembling but entirely intentional. A mark left by a woman who knew she was fatting, but refused to go quietly. I'm not gone yet, she whispered. I folded the note into my wallet. At 1:45 p.m. the next day, I parked outside Capitol Title Services. Ruth pulled in right behind me. We walked into conference room B together. Linda Yates was already arranging neat stacks of paper at the head of the table. She looked up, recognizing Ruth instantly. Ms. Madler, I didn't see your firm listed on this transaction. I represent the trust, Ruth said calmly. We have documents relevant to this closing. Before Linda could respond, the door swung open. Diane walked in first, wearing a cashmere blazer and church pearls, her social smile perfectly in position. Aaron followed with a leather portfolio, then Gregory, gray-faced and staring at the floor. Brenda Voss and Daniel Frey trailed in behind them. Diane saw me and stopped dead. Her smile stayed, but the muscles underneath it tightened. Nora, what are you doing here? Taking a seat, I said, sliding into a chair. The room went dead silent. Linda Yates looked at Ruth. You said you have documents. I do. Ruth opened her briefcase and laid 3 items on the table like evidence before a judge. First, a certified copy of the recorded trust deed from August 12th of last year. It transfers this property into the living trust. Ms. Caldwell here is the successor trustee. Diane's smile fell in stages, like a building losing its foundation. Second, Ruth continued, the durable power of attorney nomming Nora as agent, executed the same day, currently in effect. Aaron leaned forward, his voice tight. We have a more recent power of attorney that supersedes that. Ruth placed the final document down. A capacity evaluation from Dr. Mercer, dated August 9th, confirming Lorraine had full capacity when she signed our documents. I also have Dr. Mercer's evaluation from last week, confirming she currently lacks capacity, meaning the September document your family obtained was signed without legal competence. It is completely void. The room turned to ice. Linda Yates picked up the trust deed, compared it to her file, and turned a piercing gaze on the realtor. Ms. Voss, you informed me this trust had been dissolved. Brenda's face went entirely white. I was told. The recorded deed confirms it hasn't, Ruth cut in. The sale cannot proceed. Linda Yates set the papers down and squared her shoulders. I cannot close this transaction. Daniel Frey immediately closed his portfolio and stood up. I think we're done here. He turned and walked out, followed quickly by Brenda, who refused to make eye contact with anyone. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then Diane exploded, standing up with her palms flat on the table. This is ridiculous. Nora is a paralegal, she has no authority. My husband is Lorraine's only child, and he has a signed power of attorney from a woman hospitalized for confusion that same week, Ruth interrupted, which holds 0 authority over assets held inside a trust anyway. You can't do this, Aaron shouted, his voice raw, abandoning all pretense. I have a $740,000 payment due in 6 weeks. If this deal falls through, I lose everything. Mr. Caldwell, your financial obligations are not this office's concern, Linda Yates said coldly. This is my grandmother's house, I said, keeping my voice at a steady, conversational volume. You tried to sell it while she sat alone on her birthday eating cake. You forced her to sign papers in a hospital bed. You lied to the title company. And you're telling me I'm the one destroying this family. Aaron's mouth opened, then clamped shut. His fists were clenched at his sides. Diane dropped back into her chair, dissolving into loud, theatrical sobs. Gregory sat motionless, staring at his mother's real signature on the deed, finally realizing that she had outsmarted them all. Ruth broke the quiet. For the record, an Adult Protective Services investigation into financial exploitation is officially active. Any further attempts to transfer this property will be treated as a criminal matter. Diane stopped crying. She glared at me, her expression turning venomous. You'll regret this. When Aaron loses his company, when your father has nowhere to turn, you'll remember that you did this. I stood up, slid the manila folder into my bag, and looked at her. You don't get to decide what she's worth. Linda Yates looked up at me. I'll be documenting this closing as void and flagging the file. You'll receive confirmation by email. When I stepped outside, the cold November air hit my face, and I realized I'd been holding my breath for 9 days. 8 weeks later, Aaron missed his balloon payment. The bank foreclosed on his developments, and his company filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. He's currently working as a project manager for someone else, making a fraction of what he used to. He never called to apologize. Diane's social standing in town completely fractured as the story leaked. She stopped attending her clubs, and by spring, she and my father slunk away to a condo in West Hartford. My dad emailed me once in March. I should have done more. I know that now. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Some apologies are just a record of what a coward knows they should have done. APS substantiated the abuse. Through 2 probate hearings that my family didn't dare contest, the fake power of attorney was formally voided. The court appointed me as Gran's legal guardian and permanent trustee. I deferred my bar exam, took a leave from the firm, and moved into her guest room. I became the person who made sure she ate dinner, took her medicine, and sat on the porch when the afternoon light hit the hydrangeas. It wasn't the career path I'd planned, but it was the right one. On a Tuesday in April, I baked a vanilla cake with buttercream. I set it on the maple kitchen table, the one that had survived 50 years of Thanksgivings and 1 attempted theft. Gran shuffled in, crossword in hand. Whose birthday? Nobody, I smiled. We're having cake because it's Tuesday. She sat down, took a bite, and closed her eyes. This is my recipe, it's good, don't change it. We ate together in the quiet kitchen as the prism above the sink cast small rainbows across the floorboards. The table held. A person's worth doesn't expire when their memory does. And sometimes, the quietest love in a family is the only one keeping watch. That's my story. 1 empty party, 1 manila folder, and a grandmother who remembered first. If this reminded you to check on a loved one's directives, do it today. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, drop a comment below, and I'll see you in the next one.